Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you all for joining us in person, as well as over the Zoom link. And today, we are here to discuss the next generation 911 connected PSAP. I'm Ravi Puvvala. I'm the General Manager, Strategic Business Unit with Center for Automotive Research. We are hosting this panel along with my two other nonprofits, which is COVESA, the Connected Vehicle Systems Alliance, and LSL, the LiDAR Saving Lives Public Safety Coalition. Myself and Tim VanGoethem from ESS are the moderators, and we have a stellar panel. Before we get started, I want to introduce my co-moderator, who's going to run through the overall framework of what this roundtable is about. And Tim VanGoethem is the Chief Product Officer at Emergency Safety Solutions, where he spearheads the company's product portfolio and strategy. Tim is also an integral part of the board-level corporate development committee and co-chairs COVESA's Connected Safety BOF working group. This group unites experts from public safety, automotive, commercial transportation, and government sectors to enhance road safety. ESS is dedicated to saving lives by eliminating preventable crashes involving vulnerable vehicles that are disabled and stopped on or near active roadways. Prior to ESS, Tim was with Harman and Motorola, where he led innovation projects in automotive and consumer electronics. His specialties include automotive electronics, mobile software, wireless technologies, context awareness, big data, and analytics-based solutions. Tim?
Thank you very much, Ravi. So we're really excited to share with you a very important topic. Maybe something that you're not used to coming and talking about at conferences like this, but it's something that we really need to pay attention to, because the problem that we're trying to solve, if I could get the slides to advance, is the number of people that are injured or killed on the side of the roads. Unfortunately, despite all of the great innovations that we've taken as an industry, the numbers are going in absolutely the wrong direction. So just in 2021 alone, over 42,000 people were injured or killed using the roadways just in America. That's an American number. And unfortunately, it's raising at a compounded annual growth rate of over 10%. Thankfully, as Ravi mentioned, we're going to step up and do something about it. So we're happy to co-host this together with LiDAR Saving Lives, as well as the Center for Automotive Research, 3 nonprofit organizations that serendipitously kind of found ourselves working on the same thing. And really, it's about starting this kind of a conversation. How do we bring people from automotive, public safety, units of government, all together to look at this in a big picture? I think we pride ourselves as an industry of working on solutions for our direct customers. This gives us an opportunity to go even above that and start working cross-industry and really understanding what are the needs of the collective market. The construct that we've been using in the Connected Safety Birds of a Feather is what BOF stands for, Birds of a Feather, is this notion of a journey map. And it's proven to be very powerful for us. So instead of us immediately jumping to a solution or getting into creating the technology, Larry and I, as we co-hosted this team, we wanted to take a step back and use simple storytelling as a way to really understand what is the problem that we're trying to solve for explicit stakeholders. What do they really need in a real life scenario? And we developed a very simple panel of 10 different scenes focusing on one particular stakeholder, this young woman named Sophie. What we've been doing inside of the Connected Safety Birds of a Feather now is walking through this, and we're finding, well, there's a lot of other people that touch this scenario. It's not just Sophie. It's, well, what about the person in the tanker truck? What about the person in the water? What about the first responders that are expected to come and help these people in this situation that we find themselves in? So we use storytelling to really understand what is their need and what value can we create as we walk through these scenarios. So we built this simple map, and what we're going to focus on today is explicitly how do we change the 911 dispatch system into an effective means of dispatching the right help. If you really think about the core problems, the dispatcher who's chartered with figuring out, well, who do I send and what equipment will they need? The two things that they're really fighting against is time, right? Today it takes 2 to 3 minutes. I know people probably have a different opinion of what that number might be, but it's a long time for you to make a 911 call and effectively communicate the situation that you're in. We believe that we can do better. We believe, and we're going to talk today about how do we get the information in the hands of a 911 dispatcher within 5 seconds. And further, how do we bring more knowledge to that person? Because today, they know there probably was an accident. They probably know where it was or it is, but that's about it, right? They don't have enough context or information about, how many people were involved, how severe was the collision, what can I really effectively do? So we're going to narrow in on kind of 2 of the scenes from our journey map. How do we provide instantaneous IP connectivity directly to the 911 dispatch system? And how do we get that dispatcher's eyes on that scene within 5 seconds? That's the journey that we're going to take with you today. And when you think about what does the dispatcher need, it's not just what happened in the scene. That's kind of the things that are highlighted in blue. Where did an airbag deploy? Where is the vehicle located? What other sensor information like cameras or LiDAR? How many occupants? That's about the scene and the collision itself. But what are the assets that I have? Who are the people, the machines, the equipment that are available to me in proximity that I can deploy against that emergency? And then do I know anything about the victims themselves? Do they have any underlying conditions? Do they have allergies? Anything that we can do so that the dispatcher that's trying to do this in real time in a critical situation has everything available to them to make the best decision on what to go do. So instead of listening to me, we've assembled this incredible panel of experts, and we're going to walk through kind of each of the aspects. So I'm going to turn the mic back over to Ravi, and he's going to narrate us through the next section.
Thank you, Tim. To summarize, the whole panel is about building the intelligent crash data network and empowering the PSAPs, the PSAP dispatchers. And this is all about the eyes on scene, situational awareness under 5 seconds. So we have a stellar panel here, which represents the intelligent vehicle, the connectivity, the telematic service providers, the PSAP dispatch integration, and representation from NHTSA. The intelligent vehicle framework is going to be described by Scott Craig. Scott is the president of SBC Advisors. It's a consulting firm that aids automotive tech startups in commercializing the technology within the realm of advanced mobility. So with over 3 decades of industry experience, Scott has worked across various technologies and industries, including autonomous vehicles, ADAS, ITS, smart infrastructure, semiconductors. He's a passionate leader renowned for his ability to develop and execute customer-focused strategic plans. His expertise and strategic insight have been pivotal in helping startups navigate the complex landscape of automotive technology, ensuring that innovative solutions reach the market effectively and efficiently. Thank you, Scott.
Can you hear me? Oh, there we go.
So let me introduce the whole panel, and then Scott, you can get started. So next we have John Boeing. John is a founder of Conekt.ai, a groundbreaking connectivity orchestration platform designed to revolutionize the management of cellular devices. With over 15 years of experience in the technology industry, John has honed his expertise in hardware, software, and end-to-end solutions, particularly within the realms of IoT, automotive, and telecom industries. So Conekt.ai offers a unified platform that enables customers to manage cellular devices across various operators. John's entrepreneurial spirit and ability to build winning teams have been instrumental in driving growth and innovation within the organization he leads. He's a key player in the mobile industry with a particular focus on smart home and automotive connected car solutions. Thank you, John. Next, we have Steve Coker from SiriusXM. Steve is the Senior Vice President of Connected Vehicle for SiriusXM Connected Vehicle Services, where he leads a dedicated team in delivering top-tier telematics and connectivity services to automotive OEMs. Steve's career is marked by his ability to develop and launch innovative, customer-centric solutions across various business markets. With a background in both marketing and engineering, he excels at transforming customer needs into valuable product and service offerings. Steve's proven track record in the connected vehicle space underscores his ability to drive innovation and maintain SiriusXM's position as a leader in telematics and connectivity services. Thank you, Steve. Next, we have Martin Lundh. Martin Lundh from WirelessCar. Martin is the product management and strategy manager at WirelessCar. He's responsible for driving automotive digital services from conceptualization to industrialization. With extensive experiences in sales, product management, and development of connected car solutions, Martin has a deep understanding of the international automotive industry. His role at WirelessCar involves overseeing the entire life cycle of digital services, ensuring they meet market demands and customer expectations. Martin has broad experience in connected car ecosystem. Martin's contributions to WirelessCar are pivotal in maintaining its reputation as a leader in automotive digital services, particularly in the areas of connectivity and telematics. Thank you, Martin. Next, we have Dave Sehnert from RapidSOS. He's a next generation 911 subject matter expert. He has served in the public safety industry for 23 years. For the last 17 years, he has been committed to advancing NG 911 initiatives across the United States, advising emergency communication centers and state 911 authorities in their planning, procurement, and implementation of NG 911 services. Dave is a technical contributor in the creation of 2018 NG 911 cost estimate to Congress and serves as the secretary on the NG 911 Interoperability Oversight Committee. As RapidSOS head of public safety partnerships, he's responsible for creating alliances that enable the delivery of life-saving emergency response data to ECCs. Thank you, Dave. Next, we have Brian Tegtmeyer from NHTSA. Brian serves as the National 911 Program Coordinator at the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration Office of EMS. With over 28 years of experience in public safety communications at local, state, and national levels, Brian has a rich background in the field. He began his career as a dispatcher at an Illinois police department and has since held various leadership roles in 911 systems. Notably, he managed an Illinois 911 center that served 44 agencies and a population of over 850,000 citizens. Brian has also been a national educator for more than a decade, teaching public safety telecommunicator courses. Thank you, Brian. With this, I would like to start with Scott. And Scott is going to present about how the data, most importantly, the LiDAR, radar, camera, all of the information that can be integrated back into the 911 center.
Thank you, Ravi. And thank you to CAR, COVESA, and LiDAR Saving Lives. It's a privilege to be here this afternoon. What I hope to do is give a high-level overview of vision-based technology in 911 public safety, and hopefully have an opportunity to describe some of the ways we can expedite the adoption, use some examples of some upcoming projects that are being deployed, as well as look at some of the barriers that need to be overcome. And I like to do that through highlighting the emerging integration of vision-based technology, LiDAR, radar, cameras, for example, from intelligent intersections and connected cars in 911 emergency response. I'll skip the shameless plug, although we were given that opportunity because Ravi did a great job of mentioning who SBC Advisors is. You're looking at SBC Advisors. Basically, it's an advising and consulting company that is leveraging our know-how, our know-who to help create who luck with mobility startups. And who luck can also be referred to as success. I have 38 years in the automotive industry, degrees in physics and electrical engineering. I was bored after being out of school for 30 years and decided I'd get my master's in theology, which I'm currently working on. Most recently, I had the privilege of leading the Americas for Innoviz Technologies, which is an Israeli technology company focusing on LiDAR and perception software. 25 of those 38 years was in the semiconductor world, working with the likes of onsemi and Infineon. Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Too many gadgets up here. I think just quickly, there are 4 overarching steps in my mind to expedite adoption of this real-time imagery, both in cabin and outside, in order to create situational awareness. And that comes in the form of public and private partnerships, regulatory support, as well as key POCs and demonstration projects that provide real-world testing and validation in a controlled setting, as well as stakeholder engagement. I mean, involvement of 911 public safety, the urban planners, automotive OEMs, robotaxi companies, and tech developers, to mention a few. Probably most of you know what situational awareness refers to, but if not, I'll just quickly mention that situational awareness refers to the ability to perceive and understand the context, dynamics, and potential consequences of a situation in real time. It involves being aware of the immediate surroundings, monitoring changes in the environment, and interpreting information from various sources to form an accurate and up-to-date understanding of the situation. Situational awareness is a critical component of emergency management, and it refers to the ability of emergency responders and decision makers to understand and interpret the current state of the emergency situation, which includes, as Tim was mentioning earlier, its context, the dynamics, and potential consequences. Cameras, for example, with high dynamic range, radar, LiDAR, along with high-definition maps, can serve as valuable tools in enabling better situational awareness by providing high-resolution imagery and data that can be used to analyze and understand the environment. These advanced sensor technologies allow for accurate and precise location tracking and mapping. And LiDAR has a unique benefit of creating an accurate 3D model of the environment, which helps in identifying potential hazards, planning routes, and analyzing the surroundings. Let's see, how do I point? So I put together, this slide, as you can see, shows in-cabin monitoring, as well as a point cloud rendering from a LiDAR system, as well as just an overview of all of the sensors that are involved in an ADAS system today that are being deployed. And not all points are created equal. Some bias in the one I'm going to show you from the company that I was working for previously, Innoviz, but it gives you an idea of the quality of the technology, as well as the type of imagery and information that can be transmitted in real time in order to help expedite the 911 dispatch system. So let's see, which one is it, Tim? Oh, no. Yeah, actually, I want to play the video, yes. Just appreciate that. Yep. Ooh.
Willie was really 30 megaton.
Okay. That's okay. We had it going earlier, but that's okay. If you go to YouTube and look up intersection, Innoviz Technologies and intersection, you'll see an example of the 3D point cloud. The vehicle is only part of the story, though. There's another part, and that is concerning the someone's trying to steal my presentation.
I request to people who have logged in through Zoom link, please mute your microphones.
Okay, perfect. So as I was mentioning, the vehicle sensor technology is only part of the story. There's another part of that story as it relates to infrastructure. And here I'm referencing the company that I worked with when I was at Innoviz called SensaGreat, who deploys systems at intersections with both camera and LiDAR, and looking at fusing that information and being able to create the data package that can be utilized to be transmitted not only to the vehicle, but clearly to the dispatch centers as well. And more relevant to our talk today is a project that is, I know, underway or working to be underway through RoadMedic and VISS. And I had the privilege of working with them also when I was at Innoviz in order to create this second piece of the puzzle, right? Because having the LiDAR on the vehicle, for example, is great, but in order to really create a comprehensive situational awareness, you need infrastructure as well, because the last time I checked, cars can't see around buildings. And so I think it's imperative for both of those pieces to be enabled in order for this technology to really work. And in this sort of schematic that you can see, the roadside system here through VISS is utilizing LiDAR, and that information is coming in, and RoadMedic is taking that information and transmitting it into the computer-aided dispatch systems. It's in effect, it's looking at a post-crash event. I mean, clearly we want to look at creating a scenario where we eliminate crashes, but crashes are going to happen. And in this case, it's effectively taking the airbag and using the airbag as a sensor and utilizing that information as an IoT device in order to expedite the valuable seconds that are needed in order to save lives. And I think as you look at this particular project, it's looking at an end-to-end integration that is combining both collision prevention and rapid emergency response, in addition to the advanced sensor technology, in this case utilizing LiDAR and camera systems that are already existing within the infrastructure and at the intersection, as well as AI-enhanced analytics. Right? They bring a sophisticated algorithm that will predict and analyze both the road user behavior as well as the potential collision that may happen, and then clearly when it does happen, and all of this in providing real-time alerts to the CAD. So the big question is, how do we connect the pieces of this puzzle? As I mentioned earlier, and as we look at sort of the stakeholders and getting folks involved, I think clearly enabling the airbag as an IoT device into the CAD is imperative, but also sort of creating standards. And clearly with COVESA LiDAR, for example, FACETA, and for those of you that don't know who FACETA is a nonprofit and non-governmental organization that represents the international community of mobility engineers and leaders. And it's FACETA's goal to promote excellence in mobility, to ensure that mobility is both sustainable and accessible. And there is an intelligent safety working group that FACETA is supporting, that perhaps as we walk through our talk today may be of interest and clearly I think beneficial as we look at the entire ecosystem. But as I mentioned, the key is connecting these two pieces, and in that regard, I would like to turn it over to John from Conekt.ai in order to tell you how that is going to take place.
Thank you, Scott. I just want to remind everybody that we have 7 to 8 minutes presentations from each panelist, and then we're going to go into a roundtable discussion. So thank you for visualizing the what kind of data is being integrated from the vehicle. And now we're going to talk about the connectivity options. How do we get this data back into the 911 center? So, John.
Great. Thank you, everybody. And thanks for the hosts for inviting me. I know I look like I just came out of a cave. So just the San Diego weather and the San Diego mentality. So I'm very happy to be here, and thank you for really everybody inviting me. It's great to be part of the panel. And also thank you to the many people that didn't hire me in here and those that did offer me jobs. It's a close community, and here we are today, and it's just really special. Everything happens for a reason, and I've been blessed to now be a founder of my own company, Conekt.ai, and follow my own passion that a lot of you know I'm deeply passionate about, and when it comes to connectivity for automotive, IoT, and now public safety, which I'm very excited to talk to you all about. So Conekt.ai is a very new startup. We started last year out of San Diego. We share offices with Globalstar and the new Globalstar leadership, Paul Jacobs, Matt Grob, and the Qualcomm founders. So it's a very exciting small startup environment we have, believe it or not, in San Diego. So I welcome anybody to come visit. There's some in the audience that I've done some racing with in Pacific Beach, and I've even taken somebody here to Tijuana. So if anybody wants to come, I'll always host them. So Conekt.ai, we've really built it through all the years of all the challenges within the connectivity space, and this is from multiple years in my life in Korea, 4 years at Samsung, 9 years at AT&T, a couple years at RapidSOS, and then finally an automotive OEM within Rivian. And I just heard the same challenges across the entire value chain, and it's all about how do we connect all of our devices and all of our things around the world, and how do we manage it? And this is a problem still nobody has solved, and it continues to be an issue. The more complex systems we get, the more data we get, and the more applications that are needed for these high data requirements. And so we built an orchestration platform for you to, in large enterprises, to bring in their own carrier agreements, their own SIM strategy, and we literally sit on top of all the billing systems and all the data management platforms out there today, and this is a big problem with all the large enterprises. And so we give the large enterprise one interface to orchestrate and manage all their connectivity across multiple carriers, and these are direct carrier integrations. This is not MVNO, this is not connectivity provider, these are direct carrier integrations that allows the enterprise to finally pick which carrier they want to be on for which application, wherever they want to be anytime. And so we've done this now, and we've successfully deployed it and allow large enterprises to switch from one operator to another. And we'll talk about shortly how this applies to public safety in our use case. Next is the SIM strategy within Conekt.ai. Very applicable for large enterprises. So the SIM strategy, which I'll get into, there's a lot of discussions on FirstNet, Verizon for Government, T-Mobile, or Verizon Frontline, T-Mobile for Government, and are these networks really better than others? And I'll talk about it today of why we think having a multi-IMSI SIM or a SIM that supports multiple networks is critical, not just for public safety, but also automotive. Try to have some fun here on my slides. So these are the crazy connected world of PSAPs. We have the antiquated PSAPs, we have present state PSAPs, and then the dream PSAP with every screen software you could imagine. Looks like a space station or a command center. That's years of RapidSOS were very valuable to me. It really helped me understood the antiquated technologies that are in the PSAPs. And thank goodness we all have software like RapidSOS to give them all the data requirements, all the data fields, all the imagery that's needed, and really any data from an IoT device into a PSAP. So that technology's there, and you'll hear that throughout the next few minutes here. Is really my key message for today is all the technology is here in the industry. We have everything, and it's really my goal is to hope to reach out to every single one of you in this room and on the call, because each one of you can participate in bringing that technology together in a different way than you have before today, and I genuinely feel that. I get quite emotional nowadays. I have 3 little kids, so I always have to take the soft side, and that's important when it comes to saving lives. We're all drivers, we're all passengers, we all have family members and friends in cars. We all should be thinking about this every day. How do we get the data over the crash and accidents over a network faster, and how can I participate? And everybody in this room can do that. After the crazy world of PSAPs, we even have a crazier connected world in telecom and auto. Those who know me well, I always use emojis. Sorry, I even had to put it on a slide. So it's just pure chaos when it comes to a city, and a lot of people tend to ignore it versus dive in deep. And we all have a responsibility to learn the ecosystem of a city as well as an automobile. And what are the mechanisms? What are the sensors? LiDAR, camera, radar sensors. How does that data be transmitted? Again, not to go into the details, the key is Everybody, even in this room and on this call, knows one person that can tell the whole story. And if not, we can put the story together as a group, and we should really go on a full-fledged hunt to make sure that this is implemented both within auto OEMs, government, and as well as telecom and the technology partners. So that's where the value chain comes into play of how I see it. It's really important for me here to call out the who and the why. I think that's often forgotten when it comes to our technology and the partners we work with. We get a little self-centered, the ego gets in the way a little bit, and it's really important to think of who is it that we need to partner with. Every single person plays a key role, the engineers, the product managers, the program managers, the leadership, government, and it's critical to have each one of them play a role. And then why are we doing this? Why are we sitting here today? Again, back to that same mission. It's to create a safer environment on the roads, help everybody feel more secure that their loved ones are capable of driving or being able to drive. I see 30-year-olds not even driving nowadays. And so we need to ensure that technology's there. And then the last one is be effective and efficient. So in doing this, it's really key to have a full understanding of the value chain. And I'll be a little cognizant of the time here. I know we're up at time here, but happy to talk about it. I think we're going to talk about it a little bit more in the roundtable. And I will share one more slide just as a reading page for each of us to think about the questions that come up on our daily work lives. And really, is 5G needed? Is it really faster? I'm hearing a lot about FirstNet. FirstNet SIMs aren't what they were told, or what everybody was told they were going to be. A lot of public safety is now going back to original carrier SIMs. But why can't we put two profiles on one SIM, a FirstNet and an AT&T? And why can't we have an AI algorithm on that SIM or an applet on that SIM to pick which network for which scenario and which application? Standards. We talk about standards way too much. There's a handset OEM that's the largest in the world with $1 trillion+ market cap that doesn't care about standards. So as long as the technology is validated by the value chain, we should consider that. And when it comes to satellite connectivity, which is now under the 25 seconds round trip for high volume data packets, or 5 seconds round trip for a GPS, we should be having satellite in a lot more areas. So these are just some of the questions I wanted to share with you all, because the main point that I wanted to make is all the technology is available now, and it's really up to us to implement it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Now we're going to hear from Steve Coker from SiriusXM. You've heard the intelligent data, as well as the imagery, as well as the situational awareness. You've heard from the connectivity perspective, now from the telematic service providers perspective in terms of what all this means.
All right, thank you. As I said, I'm Steve Coker, and I've been with SiriusXM now for 8 years, leading the SiriusXM Conekt team for the last 2. Prior to that, I worked for 5 years at an OEM, telecom for 14 years before that, but I also have 8 years of experience as a law enforcement officer, 3 of them as a first responder. And my experience firsthand in all these roles drives my passion for what we're discussing here today. So SiriusXM has been in the business in various names for over 30 years and has pioneered technologies and processes that help define what it means to keep people safe on the road. With more than 50 services provided to more than 15 active OEM programs, we have more than 13 million active subscribers today, giving us a unique position in the North American market. In the interest of time, I'm simply going to say we're a full spectrum provider, including telematics, contact center, billing and subscription management, as well as marketing to maximize the revenue to our OEM customers. I really want to focus in on how the components that we have built in our platform combine together in a crash event. When a crash event happens, there are multiple sources of data that we bring together to help equip PSAPs and first responders with the relevant information they need. This includes vehicle information that we obtain from the OEM in advance, things like make, model, and standardized color, information about the subscriber and owner, such as name, address, or emergency contacts. We get real-time event data sent from the vehicle at the time of impact, including things like location, direction travel, delta V, seatbelt status. Short answer is, if the OEM has enabled transmission of the data to us, we can in turn provide it to the PSAP. But in addition, there's real-time information shared verbally with the response agent, such as how many occupants are in the vehicle, are there other vehicles involved in the accident, is it blocking traffic? And all this information has to be collated in a meaningful manner by both the platform and our response center agents to share with the PSAP, who then in turn dispatches first responders. On average, SiriusXM Conekt handles over 100 crash events every single day. Let's see how this plays out in an actual crash. So let's have a driver. I'm going to call her Julie. She gets in her Chrysler Pacifica Hybrid to head to the grocery store. Just a few blocks away from home, she glances down to set the cruise control at 40, knowing that the local police are strict about speed limits. In the brief time she glances down, a driver in a Chevy Suburban tries to cross the roadway, apparently unaware of Julie's Pacifica, which has the right of way. When Julie looks up, there's no time to react and hits the Suburban broadside at 40 miles an hour, deploying the airbags as the Pacifica knocks the Suburban on its side. Since Julie's Pacifica is equipped with SiriusXM Guardian, upon impact, it immediately calls, and a SiriusXM response center agent answers within seconds. Simultaneously, the vehicle sends relevant real-time data to our platform, which is immediately viewable by the agent. As with most people in a crash, Julie is somewhat dazed and confused, but the immediate calm handling by the response center agent helps orient Julie. The agent quickly confirms that she is unhurt, but needs emergency response because it's a multi-vehicle accident and blocking traffic. While this agent stays in continuous contact with Julie to support her throughout the aftermath, as soon as he knows that a dispatcher is required, he contacts a second agent through chat and digitally shares all the relevant information with the second agent. This second agent immediately calls the relevant PSAP and informs them of the accident and the need for dispatch of first responders. This second agent model, pioneered by SiriusXM Conekt nearly 30 years ago, remains the gold standard for handling crash events today. Now, historically, this second agent would have had to verbally share that information with the PSAP. However, with the ACN Plus solution provided by SiriusXM Conekt to all its OEM customers and powered by RapidSOS, all the relevant data can be shared digitally and is displayed in real time to the PSAP telecommunicator, saving valuable time. The RapidSOS partnership, exclusive to SiriusXM Conekt for the automotive industry, is available to any OEM, regardless of whether SiriusXM is the TSP. Just some of the relevant information shared digitally include the location of the vehicle, direction of travel, make, model, color, and crucially in this case, that the vehicle is a hybrid EV, and Julie's name and contact information. Equipped with all this, the telecommunicator dispatches police and fire response, which is needed as the driver of the Suburban is trapped and unable to get out of her vehicle. Meanwhile, the first response center agent continues speaking with Julie and asks if she would like her emergency contact notified, and she says yes. He notifies the second agent via chat, and as soon as that agent is done with the PSAP, he calls Julie's husband to notify him. And the response center agent stays online with Julie until the first responders arrive. Now, I remind myself of this particular incident because we handle, as I said, more than 100 on average every day. And this is personal, right? Every day we save lives. In this case, Julie's not a fiction. This is my wife. This is my car. This was a neighborhood friend that was in the Suburban. Like, what we do matters, and it's important that we figure out ways to expedite and get the right response as quickly as possible on scene. I know my colleague Dave from RapidSOS will go into more detail about the importance of having a consistent way for the PSAPs to ingest and display digital data from vehicles and TSPs. But let me just say, we've shown on average a 37-second reduction in dispatch times since we've partnered with RapidSOS, while covering over 98% of the population. Seconds saved saves lives. And I also want to emphasize this partnership with RapidSOS allows us to send text-based external data sources in our solution. So if we receive information from any other source, could be health data, for example. We can also transmit that through our partnership directly to the PSAPs. As the industry evolves, as the needs of the auto manufacturers evolve, and the demand of customers evolves, we too find ourselves evolving. For SiriusXM Connect, safety and security are the fundamental core of who we are and what we do, but no individual entity can solve the complex problem of vehicle safety. This is why conversations like this roundtable are important. It's where the power of partnerships shine and where we bring the best that each of us has to offer to make a real difference. I certainly won't claim to have all the answers, but I do know that when we can't prevent an accident altogether, data on crashes is critical to enable a more effective response. All that said, let's acknowledge there are some challenges that we must address. I see 3 areas that may not be immediately obvious to everyone. First, let's consider the regulatory framework. There's no question that regulation plays a key role in how we think about V2X, and that our friends at NHTSA, such as Brian, who's here with us today, are key to those discussions. However, I want to point out a different regulatory framework that also applies here, and that's the FCC. PSAPs are largely funded by 911 fees paid as a part of telecommunication services that directly connect to 911, consistent with FCC rules. There's a reason that any OEM who started making direct calls from their vehicles, from the vehicle modems to 911, quickly abandoned that approach. And that's the 911 fees, which average over $1 per vehicle per month, making direct connection prohibitively expensive to the OEM. This is one of many critical roles that private emergency contact centers like SiriusXM Connect provide, being an intermediary between the vehicles and PSAPs to help triage and forward only essential calls to PSAPs. You should not assume that any direct connection between a vehicle and PSAP will not incur 911 regulatory fees to the OEM. Next, given the volume of crashes we see every day, there's not a day that goes by without having a vehicle occupant tell us directly they do not want anyone dispatched for a crash event. Whatever their reasons, vehicle occupants do have a role in providing real-time consent as to whether to share their information, and our solutions need to acknowledge the role of real-time consent. Finally, privacy related to vehicle and crash data is an increasing concern to both consumers and state and federal regulatory agencies, given recent highly public concerns about sharing vehicle driving behaviors and articles claiming that automotive is the worst of all industries relative to privacy. We need to work collectively to ensure how to handle the legitimate privacy concerns of all involved. So with that, I want to thank CAR, LSL, and COVESA for pulling this together. And I know for us at SiriusXM, we're working with you as partners, and it's been a tremendous resource.
Thank you, Steve. Next, we're going to hear from Martin Lundh from WirelessCar.
So thank you very much. I will stand up so I don't have to turn 180 degrees around looking at my slides. So thank you for inviting me here. It was a good opportunity. I'm over here from Sweden for the Autotech event. So I'm really happy to have the chance to be here as well. Wrong direction. So Martin Lundh, as I mentioned, product and portfolio manager here at WirelessCar, where I oversee that we have the right offering towards the market and our customers. I've been with WirelessCar for more than 15 years, and yeah, in the auto industry in my whole professional life, actually. Who are we at WirelessCar? We enable safe, smart, and sustainable mobility, as we call it, by providing connected vehicle services. And what we mean with that, safe, is typically what we talk about today, call center services and others in the event of anxiety and distress and accidents by drivers. We have smart, that could be to unlock your vehicles with your phone, or how we use location data to provide journey intelligence, or supporting the sustainability agenda with how can we help drivers of electric vehicles to overcome their charging and range challenges. At WirelessCar, we've been around for more than, 25 years. It's our 25 years anniversary this year, and that has gained us a lot of experience and expertise in connected vehicles. We have now more than, it says 12, but we are now more than 13 million vehicles connected around the globe in more than 100 countries, which of course has its challenges to achieve. And we do that for companies like Audi, JLR, Mercedes, Nissan, Subaru, and others. So that is WirelessCar. We have a broad portfolio of services that we offer. I focus more on our call center services, as we have as part of our offering, where the task is to provide call centers with the best possible context to help customers in moments of anxiety or distress. So it's emergency call, could be automatic crash notification or actually manual. We push the button to trigger an emergency call. Also breakdown call and roadside assistance, which could be actually tightly connected to emergency call, because of course you don't have an automatic crash notification, but imagine you get a breakdown in the middle of a very busy highway. For me as a person, that can feel like an emergency. I would be really upset and distressed, and I push the emergency. But from a more of a medical point of view, it's not an emergency, but I may feel that way. And I think that's interesting how that kind of links together. We have stolen vehicle tracking if your car gets stolen, and finally the more luxury concierge service if you want to help with restaurants and stuff like that. What is the mission? Well, of course, we talk a lot about saving lives, and that's very much about provide the right help to the correct location with the right equipment, and as quickly as possible. I mentioned that we have been 25 years in the industry, and I kind of recalled when I joined WirelessCar in 2006. This was basically my first project, how it looked like. It was, we had a vehicle, and the vehicle was sending information by SMS. It's actually something we still use today as a backup solution, and it's not so much information you can fit into an SMS. But basically it was time of the accident, it was some type of vehicle identifier, and the location. Not very much information, but if you think about it, we still could achieve how to get to the correct location as fast as possible. That was actually the first step to achieve that with just this basic amount of information. So think what we can actually achieve more when having all that more information that is available today. And as you mentioned, the technology is there. It's just a matter of to get that information to the persons who needs it. And I think we heard much of it already. I mean, that's typically information we have today. Of course, sometimes we get like driver information, what collision systems were triggered, and also some type of crash severity assessment. What is the severity on this injury? And of course, we want to get more information, like some kind of executive summary, so you get a clear way of actually describing what's happened, which can be a challenge, and make the data easy to share. I think that's the topic really about this initiative, and also evidence of, is that data correct? This is how it can look like. You have the airbags, see what airbags deployed, how many persons are there in the vehicle, where was the car, was it the rear crash, was it the front crash, and so on. Information about the location and also about the passengers. Could also, of course, be fed by a data stream and not necessarily by a web interface. The value chain, we heard it already, it's quite of a complex value chain. First of all, you have the vehicle makers. Of course, they need to have a business case or regulatory compliance to fit in all the technical, the hardware, the sensors, the signals, the software, all that must go into the vehicle. And that, it sounds harsh maybe, but it's a business case or regulatory compliance to actually do that. Then they have the connectivity and the infrastructure that must work. We have the occupants. There is actually a challenge to know, we know who owns the vehicle. We cannot be 100% certain who actually drives the vehicle, unless you have some type of identification process, which I think the digital key is a good example, because your phone is quite of a personal device. That can actually be used to unlock the vehicle, but also to actually have a better identification of who is actually driving the vehicle. Then you have the call center to get all that information connecting to the PSAPs and ultimately to the first responders. So I think we heard it a bit already, but it's a long value chain, and we need to have a smooth way to get that information across, or to maybe take shortcuts in this value chain to make it easier. So to summarize, there is a lot of information available, and the challenge that we have ahead of us is actually how can we get information that really matters out to the PSAPs and first responders to get faster help, better help. That's kind of what we have ahead of us. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from Dave Sehnert from RapidSOS. I feel like everybody here is making RapidSOS look good because it's all about the PSAP deployment, because without the PSAP being empowered, we cannot make the impact within 5 seconds. So Dave?
Thank you, Ravi. Thank you, everyone. This is a topic that I really love talking about, and getting the right information to 911 as quickly as possible. I started my career in wireless 911 in 2001, getting, at that time, the cutting-edge location of GPS to 911, and it was, everyone loved it within 911. Over time, they became very frustrated with that location because of the slowness in getting it to the 911 center, the accuracy challenges, and that's really what drove me to RapidSOS, was not only the hyper-accurate location from the smartphone devices that we carry on our hip and utilize every day, but also the additional data that we're talking about today that can save lives, every day. And RapidSOS has been doing something about that for over 10 years now, but I would say really hyper-focused over the last 6-7 years, and with great success. That equates to over 540 million devices that are part of our ecosystem, covering over 99% of the United States population. That includes 21,000 first responder agencies that could be in the form of 911 centers themselves, or fire agencies and other field responders through our acquisition of I Am Responding a couple years ago. And that incorporates over 1 million field responders that are part of this network. In all told, we're covering 171 million incidents every year. All right. So so just a little bit about the platform itself. We've built this platform connecting multiple different IoT sensors, wearable devices, and the like. These include entities like Eagle Eye Networks, bringing in over 7 million closed-circuit TV cameras into the platform, wearable devices such as my Apple Watch, connected mobility such as what we're talking about today, smartphones and applications on those smartphones. My father wears as a Silvertree subscriber, so that for fall detection and things along those lines. We have connected buildings as part of our platform. Honeywell Connected Buildings is a great example of that. Train with Norfolk Southern, being able to provide notification of the train consist at the time of an impact or a train derailment, so that the field responders and dispatchers understand what is on that train and how to respond to it, so we don't have another East Palestine type of situation. And then smart homes, entities like Ecobee and SimpliSafe are partners of ours that we bring into the platform, and this includes a variety of different data, but pertinent to this discussion is going to be the connected vehicle information, medical information that I may have provisioned within my Apple Watch, demographics, language. You have things such as my emergency contact information. All these different information is brought through our platform, and being able to deliver to the emergency communication systems, into health systems, field responders, and the emergency contacts that may be able to play a role in that response if they're nearby. With this system, we're bringing it not only to 911 through our browser-based application, but also, and I think this is a really important differentiator from anyone else in this space, is that we're delivering it to the workflows. We're delivering it into the call handling systems, into the 60+ different computer-aided dispatch applications that are out there. Some of them are cloud-based, nimble providers that are able to make updates quickly, others are not. And that's a challenge that this industry must be aware of, is that connecting into the workflows is an important part of the efficiencies of the response, and that's an element that we provide to over like 4,000 different applications in the ECCs today. And this is an important element for, again, driving those efficiencies of the platform and making utilization of this data within those existing workflows. I won't go into all the workflow, as Steve covered a good bit of that earlier. And you know, you guys probably know this information better than I do, but the value of the data has a direct impact to the emergency response. Who needs to be arriving on scene? How urgent is this? How many ambulances may need to be dispatched? Is this important for a helicopter response because it's in such a remote location and the incident is so critical that it's life and death situation? All these different data types are information that we can bring through the platform, delivered directly into 911, into the computer-aided dispatch, and we've been doing this for years. One thing that I want to share too is an announcement we made a couple weeks ago within our Innovation Day, and that's how we're taking multiple sets of data and harmonizing that through our Harmony AI. This is an application that in the case of a vehicle accident, my wearable device has crash detection on it, as well as my vehicle has crash detection on it. But there's maybe different data provision in each of those. And both of those data sets could folks that are on the online please mute? Thank you. And so with that, we can then bring together those multiple data sets, such as my native language. That could be very helpful if I speak a foreign language and they want to bring a responder on the scene that may be able to support me more directly in that scenario. Maybe I have a severe medical condition that makes it even more important to have a flight for life type of response. And just to summarize it up, you know, bringing in the data from a variety of IoT devices, over 540 million devices today, from a variety of different school safety, telematics, connected vehicle, we have safety and security applications, wearable devices, and the like, all of those coming into the platform that could be a monitoring center that utilizes our application, delivering it then onto the 911 center, emergency communication center, through our web-based portal, or through an integration to computer-aided dispatch, through call handling systems, also into their loggers so that it's part of the record, and then onto the field responders through smartphone applications and the like. That is the RapidSOS platform as in a quick summary, and looking forward to supporting the panel here in a moment.
Thank you, Dave. We've heard from the vehicle sensor perspectives, the connectivity, the call centers, and the PSAP integration. And next we're going to hear from Brian Tegtmeyer from NHTSA. Thank you so much for taking time, and coming all the way from Washington, D.C. to here. Brian?
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is sort of a interesting full circle for my personal life and career because I've got 28 years in 911, but I went to school at Western Michigan University for automotive engineering. I left with a criminal justice degree and went into public safety, but that's a different story. But here I am back in the automotive industry, and still working on what I'm knowledgeable in, which is 911. So being from NHTSA, you may not realize that NHTSA has been the home of the National 911 program for the last 18 to 20 years. We're the home of 911.gov, and where you can find a lot of resources in 911, and we've been working heavily on Next Generation 911. But in September of 2022, our broader Next Generation 911 authorities expired, which allowed me to then start focusing on 911 as it relates to highway safety, which there's a lot to do here. So that's not a problem, but it is a pivot for our organization, and this is a new event for me to be coming to and a new group of people to be speaking to. We work in four main areas. We work to connect our systems nationwide, connect our 911 stakeholders at a state and local level. We collaborate with those stakeholders and we build and create resources for them. You've heard a lot of great information today, and I will say from my point of view, I've sat in the 911 center, I've answered the call, and I've led organizations that have done that. But there's over 5,400 911 centers. There could be somewhere between 5,400 and 6,000 of them. Our self-reported data shows that 30% of them are 1 to 2 seat dispatch centers. So they're not that technological center that John showed. You know, they're not there. We're not even close, right? 70% of them are 5 seat or less centers, right? And then the rest are your larger, more urban centers, which is like the last one that I was leading over 2 years ago in suburban Chicago, where it was a very technically driven center. So when we look at this stuff, we have to understand that and understand that perspective. And one of the things that I like to talk about when I'm talking about 911 and our ability to impact highway safety is looking at, waiting for my slide to catch up. There we go. Is looking at just what your experience could be as if you're driving along a interstate in our nation. So I look at I-95 here, going from Maine to Florida. It's the nation's longest north-south interstate, over 1,900 miles, and it covers 15. The interstate itself is in 15 states in the District of Columbia, with about 200 911 jurisdictions covering the roadway, not adjacent, covering a response on that roadway. And when you think about that, and knowing that it's unfortunately a higher fatality interstate due to its congestion and traffic, if you call 911 along that roadway in a different state, different jurisdiction, you're going to get a very different experience. And yes, we've talked about what's a lot of what is available, but I'm here to tell you that when we talk about a next generation PSAP, these states are in different levels of technology. There are going to be some that are in the bleeding edge and are going to be using all of the available technology to receive and process calls, and could even be beta testing the newer technologies, or great candidates for any of you to beta test those newer technologies. But the reality is there's going to be some along here that are in a very analog world and are not yet capable of receiving all of the data available. And it's an important part of this. When we look at our crash situation in our nation, NHTSA estimates that we have about 13 million crashes, right? We just sample. We don't even have the full count. We know that 6 million of those crashes are dispatched to law enforcement for a crash report. So there's a gap there. Between 13 million and 6 million may still be calling 911, but 911 says, well, law enforcement doesn't come out for that private property or whatever the situation may be. 1.5 million crashes dispatch EMS. I know that because I'm within NHTSA's Office of EMS, and we administer a database called Nemesis that gives us very good crash data, and we know that there's 1.5 million crashes with EMS dispatching. About 149,000, I think, are severely injured persons, and we already mentioned in the kickoff that there's over 42,000 fatalities. Another interesting part of that fatality question, though, that you may not be aware, is that we know that 40% of those victims were alive when EMS arrived on scene. So if we can get to those victims quicker and get the right level of care and get them to the right trauma center or whatever is appropriate for their injuries, we have the ability to impact that and save more lives. So when we look at our 911 system and the National Roadway Safety Strategy of the Department of Transportation, which went into effect in January of 2022, Secretary Buttigieg implemented it. It created this, emphasized the safe system approach. And when I got here 2 years ago to NHTSA and the 911 program, I looked at the safe system approach and said 911 deals with all 5 of these elements. And so I think it's important when we look at this that we look at the safer people. When people are unsafe, they call 911. So when someone's possibly driving under the influence, or when someone's got unbelted kids in their vehicles, they're calling 911. When the roads are unsafe, not necessarily from design, but they're unsafe from debris, flooding, hazard, lights out, and things like that, 911 centers are notified of that incident as well. And when people are driving unsafe speeds or there's speed enforcement, you also need to know that 911 centers are primarily law enforcement dispatch centers, right? So we're the ones dispatching those police officers for those enforcement activities. You know, we've launched our Click It and Ticket campaign this past, or prior to the holiday weekend, and all of those things impact our 911 centers. what we're talking a lot about here today and is so important to us is the safer vehicles, right? We need to be able to take these, the technologies that are needed and utilize those technologies to help us respond and connect to things like automatic crash notification systems or advanced automatic crash notification, where we could have that richer data, and we need to get that into our 911 centers. And then finally, we have the post-crash care, which is we're involved once a crash occurs of getting the right help to the right response to have the right outcome. And that is important. And we have to have location, we have to have interoperability of systems, and we have to have data collection, and we have to, you know, have operational personnel that are trained. We focus in on things like our 911 centers using emergency medical dispatch. Are they able to provide bystander care and assistance to a caller in those situations? And that's very important. So again, when we look at this and we look at the technological solutions out there, we're looking at how do we get them in all the way to 191 center, because it's not being deployed on a national basis in a fair and consistent or equitable way. It is 911 is a local issue. David mentioned 60 CAD systems. I think that's what you're connected to. There could be 250 CAD systems, I believe, in our 911 system centers, and they all operate very differently. And so that's one of the things that I can be a resource for this community for is understanding how those systems work and what we can do to interconnect them and to what I call raise the bar so we can do better everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. So now we've heard from the whole supply chain and now we're going to go through a round of questions with the panel. I'm going to start with Scott. Scott, a lot of the discussion here talked about the integration of the E911 call with more data. So how can vision-based technologies play in instantaneously identifying and visually verifying when a crash occurs? What kind of information can we empower the PSAP or the call center?
Thank you, Ravi. Clearly, the sensors, and I do agree with John that all the technology is available now because it exists. It's on the vehicle. LiDAR, for example, becomes the eyes of the folks that are doing the dispatching, right? So I mean that information, that visualization of the environment, the 3D surrounding, providing location, situational awareness, as I was mentioning in my talk, right? To understand what else is involved in the accident, right? I mean, clearly, all of the pieces, is I think we've all sort of gleaned from the discussion, is that there are a lot of pieces in this value chain, but most importantly, I think it becomes the eyes that the dispatcher needs to see what is around the vehicle when it is engaged in an accident.
All right, thank you, Scott. So next question is to John. John, so once we have the data from the vehicle from different sensors, so what are the different connectivity options available that can directly connect to a 911 PSAP, computer-aided dispatch system, and how do they compare in terms of reliability and speed?
Yes, and I'll stay away from the platform side and focus on the network side. Different network. We have both cellular. There's not just public cellular networks now. Now there's a lot of private networks. City of Las Vegas is a great example. They're one of the largest cities with their own private network, and they're not doing much with public safety right now. So it should be a trial ground. It still amazes me a lot. The RSU are connected via Ethernet with no cellular connectivity, and what happens when there's a flood in Las Vegas, which happens often, or what happens when there's other natural disasters when power's out, and there still needs to have battery backup and cell backup and satellite backup. So I think there's still a lot to consider with CV2X and that type of technology. Wi-Fi has been known and proven to be very complex when it comes to automotive, sending data packets, not necessarily in the best manner. And then we have satellite as well. SATCOM is becoming more of a standard soon to be with what's called NTN, non-terrestrial network technologies that are going to be embedded into all of our chipsets, modules, and vehicles. And then when it comes to all the sensors themselves, the LiDAR, the camera, radars, et cetera, the QNX is a really good OS system that's happening for a lot of those sensors to talk to the main control unit. Something as simple as SMS that we've talked about quite a bit today. Think of our phone numbers as being our main identifier. We call it VIN to SIM mapping with telecom and automotive. And it's very easy to actually identify one part of a vehicle and associate it with an SMS and a VIN number. So the technology's there, and a lot of different ways we can get creative with it.
Thank you, John. So my next question is to Steve. From a telematic service provider perspective, here we are discussing about how are we supplementing the TSP call center with this nationwide 911 intelligent crash data network.
Yeah, so, again, I'm really passionate about figuring out how do we connect our vehicles to the people actually responding. And, I think I share the concerns with my friends Martin here, that our ability as a TSP to consolidate that data and share it in the most effective, efficient way possible is critical to our goal of continuing to reduce, the number of lives lost on the road. It's a complex problem, but I think one of the key benefits of a TSP provider that does everything end to end is right now, it really, I think, requires a person involved to not only see the data, but figure out what data is the most relevant and share that in a way that's most effective back through the PSAPs. And so that's what I'd say is that critical role there.
Thank you, Steve. So the same question applies to Martin from WirelessCar. So how does, from your perspective, what's the benefit of supplementing this TSP call center with this nationwide 911 intelligent crash data network?
So, of course, the more data, the more we can enrich the services, the better it will be, not only to save lives, but also fit the purposes of the call centers. Just as a remark, WirelessCar, we do not operate call centers ourselves. We partner, and of course, they become our customers and listen to their needs, as well as we listen to the car makers, what demands they have on providing the type of data that I mentioned. So, yeah, by having it more standardized and more enriched, of course, it's easier to deploy on a wider basis and also improves the value proposition of the actual service.
Thank you, Martin. My next question is to Dave. As I said, the PSAP dispatcher is the real hero. So, when we are talking about the nationwide intelligent crash data network, how can this transform the current PSAP emergency dispatch process?
Sure. I think the key element here is digital data relay. Analog data, voice data relay is often unreliable, especially in vehicular accidents. I drove on my way to my hotel last night from the airport and saw a multi-vehicle accident. I think it was 3 vehicles. There were a couple other that were parked along the side of the road. Were they part of it? I don't know. I went by at about 30 miles an hour and took a look over there, but how many people were involved? I don't know. And so just the human instinct is, especially with the crumple zones and how horrible it could look, but how safe that occupant could be, it's really interesting when you start thinking about, okay, the sensors on that vehicle have a lot more accurate understanding of how impactful that accident was. And so having an understanding of the number of patients that were or that need to be dispatched, understanding what type of restraints were utilized is also going to be very informative. And being able to digitally relay that information into 911, into the computer-aided dispatch is a critical element, and something that we've done this last year is bringing in calls for service directly into CAD for alarm types and school safety type applications. And we currently have 28 different CAD applications that are engaged with us and several that are already live today, and talk about cutting down time to dispatch and getting people on scene. That's a huge advantage to that digital data relay.
Thank you, Dave. My next question is to Brian, and thank you for educating us about NHTSA's role in these emergency medical services. And what do you see as the key benefits anticipated from this instantaneous digital delivery of vision-based crash data to the PSAP dispatch systems that can enable them in less than 5 seconds?
Yeah, I think we recognize that if we can get better location information quicker with additional video or other data all into the 911 center, we're going to improve our crash response. As a 911 telecommunicator, the more information I had, the better, or also if I had the ability then to change the response based on the information I have, we can save lives. So one of the big things from the EMS point of view is ensuring that we get the right type of emergency medical services to the victim of the crash based on their injuries, or predictive injuries based on the vehicle's crash. And that's really important because in many areas of our country, EMS is varied as well, meaning you could have basic life support, training and equipment, ambulance, advanced life support, or as already mentioned, you could launch a med flight or flight for life sort of helicopter with critical care trained people to get you to the nearest level 1 trauma center. There was a case in northern Indiana, not that far from where we are, along I-94, I believe, or I-90 in Portage, Indiana, where a vehicle left the roadway in the middle of the night, ended up under the bridge, and was there for 6 days. 6 days, fishermen found this occupant. He was alive, fortunately for him, but he was in a bad place. He was in such a place that the 911 call taker, 6 days later, hearing the information, launched a flight and launched a Trauma 1 response for that crash. But if we had known about the vehicle leaving the roadway, and if we had known about this through a crash notification, we could have also done the flight response, but we would have gotten there in minutes as opposed to days. So we need this information. We need to know about these incidents when they're occurring and to have the best response.
All right, we're going to cycle back through the room again. So back to you, Scott. So you mentioned a couple of examples with SensaGrate and the work that RoadMedic is doing. Can you discuss any other pilot programs that demonstrate the effectiveness of LiDAR, radar, camera data, enabling crash detection and emergency response?
Tim? Yes, I think I mentioned it, but VISS, SIS, and RoadMedic are working together and deploying an integrated unit using advanced sensor technologies and AI. The idea is to put these RSUs at strategic intersections where there are high risk and collision hotspots, with the sort of intent of notifying, protecting, and responding. I mean, I think those are the 3 key deliverables that are taking place. So that's one example. And I did mention, SensaGrate. They've got a few different deployments in Arizona and Scottsdale and in Phoenix area, where they're looking at deploying similar technology, but really with a focus on vulnerable road users. And the nice thing about LiDAR is the fact that it can see beyond the intersection, which is important, right, for that advanced notification that we were talking about, as well as creating that situational awareness.
Okay, thanks. So John, you talked a lot about the technology being here, right? But there's got to be gaps, right? Otherwise we'd figure this out. So what technologies do you see are required to enhance the connectivity and data transmission required for a nationwide 911 intelligence crash data network to get vision-based data to over the 5,000 individual 911 centers that we heard about?
So definitely have the platform to manage multiple networks and orchestration. I think it's happened CV2X, as I already mentioned. There's no way to monitor the performance of a CV2X network right now. We don't realize that. So how does an OEM get that data? You can manage the performance of the vehicle, you can manage the performance of the asset and how it's transmitted, but not the network itself and the different metrics there. In the same system as the other LTE, 5G networks, Ethernet, et cetera. The other one is, I mentioned earlier, is a public safety SIM. We're working with a small company now, Public Safety Wireless, to create all the network profiles in the US on one SIM, and then create the directory and the rules algorithm to enhance which SIM profile and which network technology is used for which scenario. Okay, that's good. And that's really critical when it comes to billing use cases you have across the network types. So we can every single action in a vehicle now to go over a particular network when we want. And I think that is critical. And to do that, you have to have the ability to have an SDK and an applet in the SIM and in the device. So you can prioritize which data or which application goes over which network when you want it to. And then the last, again, just bringing it up on the SMS side, we're now getting into the stage of RCS 2.0 within the carrier world. This is where Apple is finally agreeing to cooperate with Google to do data transmission of SMS traffic, something I was a huge part of for way too long. I think it took 7 years now. I've been 3 jobs later. So it's something that the industry waited way too long to do. But we have it now, and that's going to be big for NHTSA and all the folks here on the panel. So.
All right, thanks, John. All right, so Steve, clearly SiriusXM has some great technology. I was really impressed as you walked us through kind of your personal story here. So how do you see a nationwide 911 intelligent crash network really improving your service offering?
Yeah, well, given our long history in providing this, it really comes down to the speed and the effectiveness and efficacy of the response. Because when we first launched these 30 plus years ago, 2G modems, it was voice only, maybe some data through DTMF signaling. And we've really, into the current century in terms of the capabilities from a vehicle. And we're really excited about how do we take what we've already built and further extend our ecosystem for partners like we have here to figure out how do we integrate that in everything else we do in modular ways that work with the way OEMs are evolving their own solutions. And there's certainly been considerable changes in that. It used to be a fairly niche project, and we did the solution end to end. Now OEMs are taking apart parts of this. And so they need to work with an ecosystem and a partner to help them make sense of that entire ecosystem together. And the better we work together, which I'm really excited about, the quicker we get response with more highly valuable data for more efficacy in the response.
Great, thank you. And Martin, WirelessCar doing some great stuff as well. So the same question to you. How do you see a nationwide 911 intelligence crash network benefiting what WirelessCar is doing?
Thank you. Yeah, I echo very much what you said. It's kind of the same challenges we have. We look a lot at how we can structure the data so you get presented in a uniform and a way that is easy to understand and interpret. I think other interesting aspects is the kind of adoption of the software-defined vehicles, where you get more computing power in the vehicles. What can you process, so to say, what we call in the edge, actually in the vehicles? Can you process more of the information already there to send more aggregated data directly from the vehicle and not processing that much in the back end or all the ways? Maybe like crash severity, kind of make some kind of judgment of injuries. If you can do that already in the vehicle, I think that's very interesting to look more at as well.
Yeah, makes sense.
Thanks.
All right. So Dave, I was surprised, I guess, at how hard you guys are working at integrating into the workflow of the PSAP itself. So what do you see are the most significant improvements we can expect in the response times using a nationwide 911 network like we're talking about today?
Sure. ultimately that digital data relay and getting the information direct from the vehicle through to 911 is going to help in 3 different areas. It's going to be able to validate the location faster. It's going to be able to assess the severity of that accident more accurately, as well as enable the 911 dispatchers and field responders to ensure there's the most appropriate level of response given the resources that are available at that time. What that typically equates to, what we've seen thus far, is anywhere from 45 to 55% improvement in response times. And that's for the dispatch, when you take in consideration the dispatch time as well as field responder time.
All right, thank you. That actually leads quite naturally then, Brian, to my question. I was stunned by your stat of 4,000 victims that were still alive when responders came on scene. So how would you see a nationwide 911 intelligent crash network really improving our ability to respond and drive improvements in the 911 centers?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've already answered the element that it would help us if we could get this data into the 911 centers. I guess I go back to the description of the centers. My biggest concern in this type of movement forward is, can you build a national network to connect all the 911 centers? In other words, we have to be realistic in how we're doing this. So partners like RapidSOS, and there's other entities in similar access in, or what we call in 911 over-the-top applications, mean over the 911 call itself, they have access and look into the 911 centers. But that's where we have to work on it, because there are other solutions out there in AACN that can provide additional information with one partner but not another partner. So my look from our point of view is, how do we do this holistically? How do we do it equitably? How does it, maybe ensure that regardless of which vehicle you're in and which provider they happen to use, can the same information get into every 911 center? So I think that's a unique challenge of this, and understanding. It was mentioned that the FCC has a role, and they do, but their role is up to the PSAP, and they stop at the PSAP's door. And that's an important distinction to understand. There is no federal regulation that mandates anything on a 911 center other than their employment law and how they operate, and also the utilization of TDD-TTY, which is part of the American with Disabilities Act. And speaking of TDD-TTY, text to 911 is something we're all familiar with, right? You can text to 911. Well, the FCC's required it for years. About 52% of the 911 centers can receive it. So when we look at where we're at with text to 911, you have to understand that while it's required by the FCC for the carriers to provide it, the 5,400 different 911 centers, only 52% of them, current estimates, are receiving that text to 911 capability, and you might get a bounce back message. So I'm looking at, how do we look at getting this equitably? The need is there. The ability to help save lives is obvious. But how do we ensure it happening?
Thank you. So we have successfully talked about the technology from across the supply chain and also some of the improvements that can be done. We're going to talk the next round about the roadblocks. So Scott, what do you see as the primary barriers for widespread adoption of LiDAR, radar camera technologies in emergency services, and how can we overcome them?
Ravi, thank you. I think there are 3 main barriers, being technical, I mentioned during the discussion, and that's really this connectedness between the infrastructure and the vehicle, and making sure that the data accuracy, ensuring a data accuracy and reliability. In addition, financial barriers, right? There's a high initial cost for deployment and maintenance of these systems, as well as a need for sustained funding for an investment. And then finally, regulatory barriers, that we see slow regulatory approval processes that are in place, as well as really a lack of standardized protocols and guidelines that exist today. And then as far as overcoming those barriers, I mean, in the same respect, on the technical solutions, as John mentioned, I think the technology already exists, but development of interoperable systems, as well as this continuous testing and refinement of the technology. And then finally, on the financial side, leveraging federal and state grants in order to really move this along.
Right. Thank you, Scott. So, John, we've heard from Brian too about like only 52% of these data centers can receive the text. So can you provide some examples of how this 911 intelligent crash data network will improve the emergency response scenarios in real world scenarios?
I think we've mentioned it quite a few different ways already, so this one's tough for me, but I'll try to involve each person here, really. So if NHTSA helps us by enabling or allowing us and allowing SMS and carriers to communicate with auto OEMs through a certain protocol or a certain methodology, prioritization on the network, I'll keep it to my domain. We can then do that VIN to SIM mapping for any event and keep that as part of a digital glove box, as an example, with Road Medic and team. Once you're able to do that, the OEM can then share the data with various sensors and tie that to a particular phone number of the vehicle as well as the passengers related to that family. Send it over an orchestration platform over all the ISPs to a SiriusXM type of system. I do believe heavily in the agent model. I think that's critical to decipher out the reality. I know we're talking 5 seconds, but you do need agents to validate. Once that data is then transported all over multiple networks, both again cellular and satellite, it then gets into the PSAP with the RapidSOS portal that gives the 911 operator the visual of the overall systems, and that's critical when it comes to being able to express what's happening in the vehicle and enabling any of that data, but also tying it back to the identifier, both in the SIM and the VIN of the vehicle.
Thank you, John. Steve, it's $1 million question. This comes down to the business model. We've been talking about how can we empower the PSAP directly. You mentioned, the $1 per month cost to the OEM. What does it take, in order to enable these vehicles to directly connect to the 911 PSAP systems? Is it feasible, not feasible?
Yeah, so I think the quick answer is under the current framework, it's not really feasible to have vehicles directly contact 911 unless the regulatory position changes. Now, I don't think that necessarily directly impacts the goal we're trying to accomplish. It just means that, a third party, whether it's SiriusXM or another, provider out there, being that intermediary, and I agree wholeheartedly with John, in our current environment, having an agent in that flow, I think is critically important because we're talking about the potential for a massive amount of potential data that needs to be consolidated and concise in a way that actually the PSAPs can actually digest. And I think that's partly the role that a contact center in this flow provides.
Thank you, Steve. Next question to Martin. So, same question applies to you, to Martin, about the business model. What do you see as the benefits of this global deployment of this nationwide 911 intelligent crash data network? Maybe you can also provide your perspectives from, big differences between US and Europe and what you see as the complexities.
Yeah, I mean, a global rollout of this is, of course, a massive challenge. We heard about just the example you had along that road, kind of how difficult that is, and then to scale that out nationwide and then globally is of course a massive challenge. I can compare within Europe, where they in 2018 model year mandated what's called public e-call, where the cars are directly connected to the PSAPs, where they sent an agreed what's called minimum set of data. I haven't seen one single report how well that plays out, to be honest. So if anyone has that, I would be very appreciated to see that. Kind of what were the effects? How many lives did we save? I haven't seen any numbers whatsoever. That would be very interesting. But I think a good kind of indicator that maybe doesn't play out as good as was planned is that Euro NCAP, which is an organization in Europe who put on safety rating on vehicles that has a very high impact on consumers, buying behavior, buying patterns or buying preferences. From now, Euro NCAP will actually rate vehicles higher that does not only connect directly to the PSAPs, but actually provide more data and more intelligence by using third-party call centers. So I think that kind of gives an indication that there is room for more value to provide. And those type of standards or effect safety ratings will help us for sure to roll that service out. If that can then come across to US, it will be also fantastic. And I know we have had conversations like with countries in the Middle East and so on, and they look a lot of what happens in Europe, what happens in US, what kind of standards and regulations can we copy, basically. So I think that's very interesting to see. And even if you don't manage to standardize the whole way, maybe you can agree on certain elements like just standardize the data information model, just to say that a vehicle is a vehicle, a crash is a, we kind of agree on the language. That would help a lot. And also definitely from the car maker perspective, the more global, the better.
Thank you, Martin. So Dave, you talked about a lot of improving the data with vision, radar, LiDAR, and this is going to empower the PSAP dispatcher with more information than they have seen before. So how does your organization plan to train and prepare them to effectively use this new technology?
Yeah, that's a complex challenge to address for multiple reasons. One is the telecommunicators that work in the 911 centers today are understaffed, and it's a position that is currently prone to high churn. And so you have new people coming in, you have people moving out, and so there's just a constant need for that education at the 911 center. And so really working to bring the data into existing workflows, into applications that they're familiar with, and within those applications, they can continually look at the same location to find that additional data, supplemental data around that incident is critical. I gave the example earlier of the alerts API that we've implemented in many different CADs today. That works in their existing CAD applications. So they're not having to learn a new widget of some sort. It's an exact call for service that they get or that they create when a telecommunicator triages and enters it in themselves. And so that's one form of it. Within our browser application, this has become pretty much a de facto at all the 911 centers in the US that utilize this application, but there's a training portal within that application. So when there's downtime, if there's downtime at the workstation, they can go in there and view a 30-second training video, maybe it's up to 4 or 5 minutes on new data sets that may be available, new feature functionality that's available, and they can quickly identify is there new materials that they need to be reviewing, and that improves some efficiencies. And then lastly, a major element of training in our industry is by participating in events such as National Emergency Number Association conferences, both state and national, as well as the Association for Public Safety Communication Officials, that's APCO. Both of those have national events in the summertime. Both of them have state, local events in the spring and fall. And then you have entities like the Denise Amber Lee Foundation, focused on telecommunicator training. Those are different ways in which education gets put out there, and I would say, if anything, folks are hungry to learn more about how to improve the operations at 911.
Thank you, Dave. My last question is to Brian before we open up the questions to audience and people on the webinar. So we've heard a lot about different discussions in terms of improving technology, improve data, empowering the PSAPs with more information. So what role does the Office of Emergency and Management Services from NHTSA play in collaborating with this, public-private stakeholders and improving the 911 intelligent crash data network and allowing the PSAP dispatcher for faster, communications, location, and ability to provide the right care? And this is all about focusing on the golden hour and improving the faster response time.
Yeah, thank you for that question. From our point of view, it's starting with just our, my being here and getting engaged with this community. And the Office of EMS is under the research and program development part of NHTSA. I'm not a regulatory side. We're in the research phase. So we can do demonstration and pilot projects. We can work in this space. And we're also working within the 911 community and EMS communities to make them aware of transportation-related grants that can improve post-crash care and impact the safe system approach. So, there's the Safer Streets for All grant from Federal Highway Authorities, which is a regional grant, doesn't have to go through the states. We're out there encouraging EMS and 911 entities to apply for those grants and resources. I do a lot of, socializing of these programs and others. NHTSA obviously does a lot of highway safety grants through our current authorities and long-standing authorities. We're trying to expose those opportunities to the State Office of EMS and 911 state administrators. There's SMART grants, which are under Department of Transportation with the bipartisan infrastructure bill, that are out there for entities that are doing these exact things. If you look into the SMART grant programs, if you're an entity out there partnering with a city or a regional cooperative or something like that, there might be fundings there. So we're looking to get more involved. Like I said, I've had a pivot in our overall role and authorities, and we've got a lot of time and space to focus on these efforts, because we think there's a lot of things out there that we can do. And the connecting the vehicles into the 911 centers is important, but even to get the 911 centers to work more effectively together, we've talked about CAD, computer-aided dispatch. We look at interoperability. The 911 centers that connect their CADs together regionally, in Denver, in South Metro and West Metro fire departments, they've connected their CADs in what we call CAD-to-CAD interoperability. They're saving like 2-minute response times by getting the closest unit or closest station dispatch. Well, if we can save 2 minutes just by the right 911 center that's got the right resources available to send help, because as Dave mentioned, resources are huge in all of public safety, not just the people answering the call, but even the number of EMS people available to respond, firefighters, law enforcement available to respond, is a struggle. So we need to get this information to the center of having jurisdiction, and then make sure that they have all of their mutual aid resources and whomever available to respond. So we're looking to partner, we're looking to get more engaged, and we're looking to be a part of this.
Thank you. So now we want to open up the questions from the audience.
I was hoping that this panel would put my mind at ease about our ability to respond to emergencies. I'm more worried now than I've ever been before. Part of the context that I'm approaching this from is Europe implementing eCall, and they had to, all the PSAPs had to come up, they actually made them implement originally older technology, the in-band modem technology. Now, of course, they're talking about a next-gen solution, and they are talking about satellite connectivity being in the mix further down the road, but they're coming up to, data, I think it's more of an IP-based solution, but they're talking about, a cat herding exercise that appears to be fairly effective. They launched an e-call mandate in cars, and they could guarantee certain performance characteristics. And I've been wanting to ask you, Brian, but I think you've already answered the question, that there are very limited minimum performance expectations of our 911 PSAP call centers. There's a very limited regulatory environment for bringing them all along. I do want to get the details of your last response from you, because the funding is the grants and all that. That's all great, but of course, I'm hearing simultaneously cat herding. These guys may be very advanced, but these guys are going to be far, far behind. Is there any way to, have a sort of a national standard of some kind, certification or anything?
Well, I kind of have that into 3 parts now, so let me try to. I may not get them in the right order. So. There are national standards. There are plenty of standards of how this should work from both the organizations. Dave's mentioned APCO and NENA being the 2 leading 911 public safety communication organizations out there. They have standards on technology. They have standards on operations. They have standards on training levels, and things like that. I trained nationally for 10 years in 911 before joining the federal government and working at NHTSA. From a funding point of view, aside from Department of Transportation funding available, the 911 program at NHTSA with our partners at Commerce and NTIA for 12 years under 2 different grant programs, dispersed grants to the states for 911. There was first a $40 million grant that was from the Enhanced 911 Act of 2000, this predates me, but 2004, and that $40 million went to the states to try to improve 911. And then in 2012, with the Middle Class Tax Relief Act that created the National Public Safety Broadband Network FirstNet that's already been discussed, it also put about $109 million into advancing next generation 911. Those 2 grants are done, gone, over with, expired, and there is current legislation pending in both the House and the Senate to further fund next generation 911 from somewhere between $2 billion in the Senate to $14.8 billion in the House. So those monies are out there in legislation, but they have not been acted on at this time. So that's what's going on from the 911 funding. But as far as your core element is, no, there are no federal requirements on 911. 911 is a state and local issue, and even not all states have the same authority. And this is the real challenge. So what the authorities are in California, administered by California's Office of Emergency Services, Cal OES, very different than what the authorities are here in the state of Michigan, administered under the 911 State Office of and Michigan State Police. And again, there's some states that have no 911 office. In West Virginia, it's a collective of state administrators, of local 911 administrators that kind of have their own little group together. They've been effective, but they're not a state office. And same thing, there's no state office in Mississippi, and there's no state office in Louisiana. And the authorities vary around the country, even if they have state offices. So that is the big challenge that comes to 911, and we're a very young part of the emergency service community comparatively, even to EMS, which always calls themselves the young community part of the EMS, that they're the young branch and service branch compared to police or fire, but 911's younger. I mean, even though it's over 50 years, in suburban Chicago, in DuPage County, they did not have enhanced 911 until 1990. And when you think of it that way, the 50 years goes out the window. And so when you think of where we have to go to get to next generation 911, that hopefully helps that perspective.
Has the automotive industry taken any responsibility here? Any participation, contribution?
I wouldn't be able to opine on that. I wouldn't. Again, I'm gaining knowledge into this space.
One more question. Thank you. That was excellent. Oh.
Just to add a little bit to what Brian said, with it being state and locally driven, you do have a lot of great state leaders in the 911 authorities that are helping drive the vision around Next Gen 911 in varying stages of that implementation, as well as varying levels of types of services. But that is where some of the hope exists, is that there's leadership out there building up the networks, building out the level of service, the quality of service, the training that's available to telecommunicators and the like.
Thank you. I just had one more question for Steve. So you talked, Steve, about real-time consent.
Yes.
I always remember when one of the first BMWs I bought, it was like, we reserve the right to share your data with marketing partners and law enforcement. That was right in the contractual agreement to take possession of the car. So what I'm curious about is, shouldn't we really be, or isn't it already, isn't there some kind of preemptive consent, implied there? I do know that, like a OnStar operator is very limited as to what they can tell law enforcement if the passenger in the car is unconscious and hasn't given their consent at the scene. But is that what you're talking about? And is there a way to have preemptive consent?
So I think for all the OEM programs that we support, pretty much in all cases that we have some language in the terms and conditions that do give us the right to do this. However, as was pointed out earlier, the owner of the vehicle is not necessarily the driver or the occupant. And so whoever that is may not have shared any right to do that. And so, we always take the driver's verbal responses as having a role in our decision. Now, clearly, if we don't hear anything, like, as often happens, we've got people who are unconscious, we will absolutely dispatch if we don't have contact. But if we have an occupant and they tell us absolutely no, I don't want you to contact the PSAP, then we follow the direction of the occupant of the car.
It's amazing. Any other questions in the room?
Just adding to that,
Oh,
Roger.
I'm sorry, John.
Don't forget that most of the services have an application on a phone, and there's a big EULA on that phone too that gives similar consent. And a lot of people don't realize that's a good way to get a lot of those consents.
All right. Any other questions in the room?
And if there are questions online, please raise your hand so we'll kind of go through the order. Other questions in the room?
No, and I do not see any hands raised online either, so.
All right, I just wanted to remind, we're going to continue this conversation at in the future events. We have the management briefing seminar coming up from CAR, which is going to be on from August 5th to 7th in Grand Traverse City. So we're going to have a session about the similar type of, how to advance the discussion that we are having between the telematic service providers, auto OEMs, and the government, and of course the PSAP integration. We plan to CAR, COVESA, and LiDAR Saving Lives Coalition. All three nonprofits are going to continue to have this conversation at multiple events. Hopefully every quarter. We plan to start from the Consumer Electronics Show to different COVESA events and also into Auto Tech and landing into our management briefing seminar that's hosted by CAR. And we also have the recording of today's session available on the CAR website and other places as well. And we really thank you all for coming in person and attending remotely. And special thanks to all the esteemed panel and my co-moderator Tim VanGoethem and the man behind the scene, Larry Williams. Without him, this wouldn't have been possible. And thank you so much, Larry, for coordinating a lot of this and providing a lot of the support and to make this event happen. Thank you again.